In this modern age, it's hard to believe how important harvest time or the fall is to people in the 18th century. All these crops are coming in, fruits off the trees. It's time to enjoy the plenty of the season, and it's time to get ready for winter. Truly, in this modern age, when we go to the grocery store, we can find any fruit and vegetable available to us any time of the year. That certainly was not true for people in the 18th century. While they did do some forcing of fruits and vegetables to ripen at different times of the year, it just wasn't common for the everyday man. So when those folks in the 18th century come into fall and harvest time, it is probably the very best time of year. You can imagine the cornucopia of things they would have available to them that wouldn't be there any other time of the year. It's harvest time right here in Indiana, and they are harvesting right now corn and wheat and soybeans. Those things are coming in and being stored up. But in the 18th century, so much more is being harvested and stored away. All the things that are coming out of the garden and the truck gardens, where you have fruits and vegetables that you might sell into the market. You've got potatoes that you have to store, and fruit trees are very full of crops, and you've got to take advantage of it right now. We've done episodes that have focused on potatoes and apples and pumpkins, but what we haven't really mentioned a lot is the pear. And pears were so very popular in the 18th century, probably more popular than they are today. If we go digging into the research and look at the books, and they talk about pears specifically, not just recipes, but the pears themselves, they mention literally dozens and dozens of pear varieties, ones I have never heard of and have probably disappeared by today. Now, pears are kind of like apples in that there are different varieties for different uses. You'll have pears that are sweet or tart, depending on whether you want to use them for table fruit or for in pies and other sorts of dishes. And you'll have the fruit that ripens at different parts of the season. So some will come in the late summer, some in the fall, and then there'll be hard pears that come in the winter. Very good for storing year round. What sort of dishes did they use pears for? Well, they would use them for table fruit. There's a compote, dried pears, pear marmalade, pear preserves, pear puddings, a pear pie or pear tarts, baked pears, and stewed pears. I picked out 2 recipes today. We'll be doing a pear tart, so very common, probably the most common pear recipe you'll find in any of the 18th century cookbooks, and a pear boiled pudding. A very simple dish, but so tasty and so easy. This tart recipe comes from Mary Johnson's cookbook, although you'll find it in probably a half a dozen cookbooks all throughout the 18th century because they copied themselves so much. So I don't know where it originally comes from, but here's what Mary Johnson says. Pare them first, that is the pears, and cut them into quarters and take the cores out. In the next place, cut each quarter across again. Throw them so prepared into a saucepan with no more water than will just cover the fruit. Let them simmer over a slow fire till they are perfectly tender. Before you set your fruit on the fire, however, take care to put a large piece of lemon peel into your water. Have your patty pans in readiness. Throw fine sugar in the bottom and lay in your fruit. Cover them with as much of the same sugar as you think convenient. Over each tart, pour a spoonful of lemon juice and 3 spoonfuls of the liquor in which they were boiled. Then lay your lid over them. Put them into a slack oven. Observe. Those directions seem a little complicated, but they're easy to do. We're going to take our pears, peel them, quarter them, take out the cores. We're going to put them in a saucepan with a little bit of water and a lemon peel, and we'll cover them up and boil them until they're tender. Other recipes mention specifically not to bake or boil these so long that they lose any texture. We want to have a little bit of texture left as we put them into the tart. So bake them or boil them until they're tender, but not so tender that they fall apart. Our tart takes a pie crust on the bottom and on the top. And we're gonna make a simple 18th century pie crust. It's not something to be afraid of. You can go out and buy pie crust, but it's more fun to make your own. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's pretty easy to do. Take some regular all-purpose flour, and we're gonna mix butter with it about 3 to 1 or 2 to 1, depending on how rich you want that pie crust to be. We can use a cutter to cut this butter in, or we can just rub it in. We don't want to touch it too long to melt that butter. We just want to grab it, squish it in, and then break it down so that it's completely mixed in with that flour. Because this is a sweet tart, I'm also going to add a little bit of sugar into this crust. Once that's all mixed nicely together, then we're going to add cold water, just enough to bring this together into a lump. Once our pie crust is finished and rolled out, we can place it into our tart pan or our pie pan. We're going to place a little bit of sugar down into the bottom of that, and we're going to take our already cooked pears that are soft but not too soft, and I'm going to place them into the dish here so that they make a nice even layer. I'm going to put a little bit of sugar on top of that, plus a little bit of lemon juice we're going to squeeze in just like the recipe says. If you want to add a little spice here, you can. And then the top lid goes on. Make sure to put a few vent holes because there's a lot of airspace in here. We don't want it to puff up too much. If you want a really nice looking glaze on the top of this tart or pie, you can put a little bit of egg mixed with water and brush it on there finally, and it'll give you a beautiful color on the top. We want to bake this gently at 325 to 350. I would watch it. Each one's going to be a little different size, so it's going to be somewhere between 20 and probably 35 minutes. We're going to be doing a pear pudding, but there's more than one kind of pear pudding in the 18th century. There is one pear pudding we're not going to do today that uses chicken meat, and then along with suet and breadcrumbs and flour and egg yolks and pear flesh that you kind of turn into a pulp, you mix that all up with cream until you turn it into a paste, and then shape it into a pear and bake it like that. I have no idea what that would turn out like, and we're not going to be doing that one today. Today's recipe is a simple one. Now normally this is called an apple pudding, but it says right down there in the bottom part of this recipe that you can do it with pear also. This one is to make an apple pudding. Make a good puff paste, roll it out a 1/2 inch thick, and pare your apples, core them enough to fill the crust, and close it up tight, tie it with a cloth and boil it. If it's a small pudding, 2 hours. If it is a large one, 3 or 4 hours. At the bottom it says a pear pudding is done the same way. These boiled puddings are so simple to do. All you need to do is take your fruit here, you peel it, then we're gonna quarter it, take out the core, and then set it into some paste. I've got some nice thick paste here. You can use puff paste like they call for, but a regular paste is gonna work just as well. And then seal it up. We wanna have it nice and sealed. You're probably gonna have some extra paste like this. Just take that away until we get a nice even amount all the way around it. We're gonna put that into a pudding cloth and tie it up. This pudding cloth has been boiled. We're gonna put a little bit of flour on the inside. Tie it up fairly tight, although it's going to stretch. It's going to get a little bigger, so you don't want to make it too tight. And then it goes into boiling water, and this water needs to be boiling at the time we put it in, and it needs to boil the entire time. We're going to boil something about this size, 2 hours or so. You can boil it a little longer, but water might infiltrate and cause some problems. So you don't want to boil it too much longer than what it needs to cook. You can imagine being in the 18th century, and we are here at harvest time, and we've been outside all day long, and it's been a great day today. And we've got our tart that's made with pears and this wonderful pudding. It's time to try them out. You can see this tart came out perfectly. It all is holding together nicely, which sometimes kind of fruit pie can fall apart. This one held together so perfectly. Simple, wonderful flavors, hardly any spice in there at all. The pear itself has all the flavor this needs. So good, you can add as much sugar as you think it needs, but it really doesn't need much. This pudding has got a wonderful kind of look to it. It looks like some sort of, asteroid that's landed, and then you cut it open and it's got the juicy pear on the inside. It is a little strange looking, but let's find out what it tastes like. Definitely has a little bit different texture, especially with the boiled paste. The boiled paste has a kind of a tough texture, so you get a different feel to it. Now, we don't do a lot of boiled puddings anymore. Hardly anybody does that. You don't see it in a modern cookbook, but it's something everyone should try out. And This is still really good. The pear just turns into a soft paste on the inside. So it's got a wonderful smooth texture along with the kind of rubbery, interesting texture that the crust gives you. And it's something that they loved in the 18th century. Sometimes this would be the only thing they would eat for a meal. It's the perfect time of year to go back and try out some of these really fun and very simple and easy to do 18th century recipes. I highly recommend them.